Are you struggling with objections? Are you struggling with sales? How was your last sales call? Are you constantly having sales calls and sometimes they're ending in a loss? You may be struggling with the objections. You may be struggling with the preparation. In this video, I'm sitting with my good friend Jerry Luna, and we break down the objections. We break down everything about the sales process in order to make sure next time you sit in front of your client, you are well equipped and well prepared to make sure you get a yes at the end of that sales call and every sales call that follows.
uh, Sales will bleed into everything you do. And so better you are at sales, the better your choice, the better your results are going to be in dating, in marriage, in influencing the world around you. It's almost a form of power that you can convey, How, if I want to change the world to my will, well, how you do that is through sales. If you want something in the world, you're going to have to, you know, use your sales skills to go get it. Whether it's building a business, whether it's finding the right life partner, it's almost like a form of, power projection. You know, turning your dreams into reality, right? Like it's not really going to come to you. How you make that happen in a way is through sales.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Um, Now, when it comes to sales, I mean, they're selling and they're selling the right way, of course. Now, Jerry, what are some of the key strategies and different things that you use? One for me, let me give an example. Of course, it's preparing. How important is preparing for sales calls in your book?
Well, it's super important, obviously. I don't think anybody will deny that. Before every sales call, I always do my research on the individual. I even
Hmm.
look at their social media to find topics that I could bring up on the call. Because if I'm talking to them about like, oh, congratulations on this past achievement. I saw on your Facebook that you like mountain biking. I love mountain biking too. It creates a deeper connection, and it actually shows that you care. And at the end of the day, people like working with people that they like that are like them too.
Right.
So obviously, preparing for a sales call is of the utmost importance. But also, it's important to know your script well enough that you don't need to keep peering at it on the sales call. You need to know it by heart so well that even if it's not going to be a straight line, like if you have a sales script that has 10 questions in a row, and you just go there like a robot and ask the 10 questions in a row, you're going to fail. You're going to fall flat on your face, and the sale is going to fall off a cliff. So you have to know it by heart well enough to know how the sale is going, what kind of milestones you need them to achieve on the sales call. Does it make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. Now, talking on the audience perspective here, I'm new at sales and I'm somewhat of an introvert, right? And I feel it's a little creepy to research a person and say, "Hey, for example, in insurance, hey, I saw you got this achievement, or I saw you had a new baby on Facebook. Congratulations on the new baby." What if I feel like that's a little creepy? How do I get over that feeling?
Well, how do you get over that is you have to realize that you're in the wrong frame of mind. Why would you think that's creepy? I would actually turn it back and say, well, why is that creepy to congratulate somebody? It's public information,
Right.
and it's public information, and it shows that you care. By not asking that, you're doing yourself and the client a disservice. You want to provide the best experience possible for the client. Well, do your research and congratulate him on his new baby. That is actually going above and beyond for the client.
Right.
You're doing yourself a favor and you're doing them a favor. If you really want to provide the best experience from sales to close to delivering the service, it's doing those little things. So I would
Right.
actually argue against, I would actually argue it's in your best interest and the client's best interest to do those things like like, congratulate them on their baby. Who doesn't want to get congratulated on their baby?
Yeah, right.
What, I remember specifically, I was in Miami and a colleague just had a baby. And, in my mind, I was like, okay, well, this guy, he must be really proud of his new child. So, I went in and I was like, that's amazing. Do you have any pictures? I'd love, and you know what this guy did? He joyfully, like, thank you for asking, and he pulled out his phone and he's like, look at my new child. Look at my baby. I brought, he was so happy about it. So, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't do those little things.
Yeah, no, I definitely um,
And
agree.
that's what I think.
I definitely agree. And, as a new person in sales, in the insurance space, one thing we noticed when I first started out, started training other insurance agents, we had a structure where, of course, referrals drive business. So when collecting referrals, some of the we asked personal questions about the referrals that we were collecting. All right, let's say this person is a beneficiary. Well, we consider that a referral. Who's the best person to call for more insurance as far as helping their family out, other than the beneficiary of the person you just help, right? Of course,
Yeah,
right? So
great strategy.
we collect those beneficiaries. And then what we noticed some agents were struggling with is asking those deeper questions. How many kids they have? They felt like it was too much information. I think it is important to know how you feel about something bleeds into your process. It bleeds into the way you're speaking about it, right? So if you're feeling like a little apprehensive and feeling this is necessarily too intrusive of a question to ask, it's going to come off as an intrusive question because you're not confident in the way you're asking the client. If I'm talking to you, Jerry, and you say, "Yeah, my mom is. I want to put my mom as beneficiary now." Okay, awesome. When's mom's date of birth? Simple things. Obviously, those are questions that we will need for the application. What's mom's phone number? Awesome. Is mom married? You see, that
Yeah,
should be an
it's
intrusive question.
natural.
Yeah, that is not needed for the application, but it's so natural. Is mom married? Okay, awesome. How long mom's been married? Wonderful. What state, what city does
Yeah.
she live in? What does she do for work? And there's things that like that. I'll start asking because now you've already conditioned the client to answer those questions about the person.
Yeah.
So you're gathering that information when you call. Hey, Miss Luna, I'm calling on behalf of your son Jerry that put you down as a beneficiary on their policy, and he mentioned that you're in Austin, right? He said I know, and then you go in to book the call. He was like, well, I know you're a busy lady. He said you're in airplane aeronautics, whatever, right?
Mm.
Or you're an accountant, so I know it's the end of the year, tax season is getting pretty crazy for you. Then you use that to book the call because you're coming from an understanding perspective. It just I feel like the gathering the information part of before booking a call, that gathering information stage before you sit down with a potential client, that is one of the most important. Preparation is most important in anything that you do. An athlete prepares. The practice is more important than the game.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Right.
And how much research do you do into a prospect before you engage with them?
Yes, I mean you look at football teams, they're watching films. They spend more time watching films than in actual practice on the field
That's right.
before they spend hours watching the films when they may spend an hour on the field practicing before this game, right? Building strategies, building just the planning stage is more important than practicing the execution, especially if you're a professional at what you do. Because once you become a professional, that means a lot of the execution becomes second nature and becomes natural. So you don't really have to practice too much of the execution. What you need to do is plan out your execution, if that makes sense.
I totally agree. And Alex Ramosi talks about this, in terms of meetings and sales calls. If you're looking at if you're looking at a 30-minute meeting, you want to prepare for that call at least double the time how long that call is. So if it's a 30-minute call, you'll have an hour to prepare. If you're doing a 1 hour call, you should at least do minimum 2 hours of preparation before the call. That way, you're ahead of the game. You know exactly what you're going to talk about. You know the milestones. You could even ask ChatGPT. This is what I do. I ask it, what questions should I ask? So that I leave no stone unturned. What do I want to make sure that I convey on the call? You know, like, um, so use any resources at your disposal. Do you ever consult with large language models before calls, Richard?
Oh, absolutely. A agent that was with our agency for a little while showed, I don't know if I talked about this on the show before, but he showed us this AI that actually practice with you based on the script that you feed it, and you can put it on like insane, average, beginner, and just it will give you objections based on the script, right? And how you're delivering that script. So this was for calls. That's what he was doing it for, but I enjoy it for the sales call. He was doing it for the booking of the appointment, but it actually helped. I saw a tremendous improvement in him being able to handle those objections because the AI was very difficult in my in my opinion, right? Tough stuff that I've never heard before. I mean, you put too long of a pause and it's throwing something in there that,
Mm, it's giving you a hard time.
yes, so it gives you a very hard time. But you can also control some of the common objections. But I think also preparing for objections is super important. And in the age of AI, that's something you can, I forgot what the AI is called, but that's something you can definitely research and look into using those AI tools to prepare for certain objections. I mean, do you think preparing for objections is valuable? And do you implement that as well?
Absolutely. But before a call, you always want to go over, your script, and the script should include the most common objections. So how sales teams are ran, especially digital, remote teams, is during the daily meetings, during the sales meetings, they drill the objections. So that way, the most common objections are addressed, on those calls. So for example, I was working with Fireside RV Rental, and I was training up their sales team. And so they were total beginners. They'd never sold, they're never sold through Zoom before, through remote means. So the first thing we did, we jumped on the call. We said, okay, here's your script. I want you to memorize this, and we're gonna drill the price objection. So we drilled that, we watched videos, we went back and forth, we drilled on it because I knew that this was going to be the biggest objection they receive. And lo and behold, he starts taking sales calls. What does he hear on most of these calls? Price objection. So he was so prepared that he was so impressed that he knew what he that he was impressed that I knew what he was going to start receiving on those calls, which was price objections. It's so important and he was so prepared that he started succeeding because we drilled it, we drilled it, and then he starts taking sales calls, and and all the drilling, he was able to overcome these objections. And it's always important to know going into the call what kind of objections you're going to receive. There's typically the price objection, time objection, spouse objection, and fit, uncertainty/fit. So is this the right thing? Is now the right time? And then if it is the right thing and now's the right time, then everything else is going to be, time, money, and spouse, which can be overcame. So, it's so important to drill the objections. In my past kiosk business, I'd go in and with my sales team, and I'd sit down with each of them, and we'd go over just objections. So for 10 minutes, I would sit there. I would sit in front of them, and I'd be like, "Oh, it's too expensive," and they would object. "Oh, I gotta talk to my wife," and they'd object. So we'd go through objections in the beginning of
Right.
the day. That way, they're set for the rest of the day, knowing and it's fresh in their mind exactly how to overcome these objections. Do you do something similar with your sales team?
Oh, absolutely. So we have a practice before the day starts where we go over objections, common objections that you might see, and you cannot anticipate every single objections. So we focused on the common objections, of course, and then we go over the rebuttals and my personal favorite, pre-buttals. Right. This is
Rebuttals. I love that.
rebuttals, that where we anticipate the objections coming. If you notice, you're getting a certain amount of objections in the same spot every single time in your sales process. Then you must develop a pre-buttal. And I'm not a fan of writing your pre-buttal in the script. I'm a fan of naturally developing your pre-buttal and just knowing when to use it. So, for example, you have the spouse objection, right? I don't have to write the spouse objection now. Now, this is one I think a lot of sales people fail at, the spousal objections, because I listened to a recording of Zig Ziglar's sales training, sales and leadership training. I'm not sure which one it was on, but I listened to two. He had a leadership training and a sales training. Now, it was his sales manager giving this, and he said, you know the categories of buyers, right? The D, the I, the S, right? Have you heard those different categories before?
Actually, I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, so the different categories of buyers. So you have a high I, and S, and I think C is the other one. I could be mixing up the letters, but C would be standing for the calculated person, right? They're a calculated buyer. It's all about the numbers. I kind of fall in that category. If the number makes sense, it makes sense to me. If the number doesn't make sense, I don't care about the emotional stuff, right? Whereas you have the high E's where it's all emotional. It's an emotional process. Now we know sales and buying, people ultimately make decisions emotionally, right? It's still an emotional process, but what connects us to that emotion, right? For me, it's the calculations, the numbers. When the numbers make sense, I feel like this is a good buy. Now that's the emotion. I feel like this is a good buy. Let's make the decision, right? And then, of course, you have the high dominant is the D. They're the life of the party, right? They're the person that anytime a party starts, they're the person you see. They're the person that's there. They have a dominating personality. So you must approach that a little bit different. So saying that to say, doing that sales training, I heard Zig Ziglar sales manager said basically that you have those people that I forgot which category they fall into, but let's say you're dealing with a person that's, I call it a one-legger. You're sitting down with just the husband or just the wife, and the other spouse is not there. So you're sitting down with a one-legger appointment. And they say, I have to talk to my wife first. I have to talk to my spouse first. And you proceed, most salespeople, what they do, they develop a process to proceed to try and close that deal by ignoring the fact this person said they had to talk to their wife or they try to make them feel okay by making that decision by themselves. I had a person try to sell me on SEO for the business, and they kept calling. And I think I said, oh, well, my wife, pretty much, she's the CFO of our house, right? She makes most of the financial decision. I make the money. I said, listen, do whatever you want with it. There, of course, I oversee. So I said, I have to bring it to the wife first to see if that's within the budget, if that's something we even want to move forward. It sounds great to me, but I don't want to be an impulsive buyer. So he proceeded to say, "Oh, you got to talk to your wife to, make a decision that's going to better your business, better your future. Just things like
Hmm.
that, where it's like, okay, this is leaving a very bad taste in my mouth, right? So you don't want to be that person that's trying to diminish the importance of that person talking to their spouse about the decision. So Zig Ziglar's training said if they said they got to talk to their wife first, they do have to talk to their wife first.
Yeah.
They do.
How would you overcome that objection, the wife
So the
objection?
training now, what we implement is a few different ways, right? Of course, you can book a follow-up call. That's, it sometimes works, and sometimes that's what they want. They're trying to get you off the hook. But retention is important. If that person said they got to talk to their wife first, you sell them without them talking to their wife, the chances of retaining that business is pretty low, right? Because now they talk to their wife, they never was involved in the process. And they're like, they're causing problems. Cancel it now, and it gets canceled, right?
Yeah.
So,
Why did you ask me?
right, exactly. So another option is okay, no, absolutely. Definitely, it's important to make sure both of you guys are on the same page. And we want you to talk to the wife first. Here's what it can do. I have 10 minutes to do a few things, to button some stuff out and send you a follow-up email and send you some paperwork after this. Why don't you give the wife a call real quick, put her on the line, I'll answer any questions that she might have. I'm sure you've talked to her about this. You guys been searching for this. So she kind of knows what's the deal, but let's get her involved, right? And then boom, you can, get the wife involved. Now, this is saying that you've made it all the way to this point, closing the deal without knowing this person has to talk to the wife first. You should know that before you even get to the closing,
Yeah. Yeah, you
right?
should
Right.
pre-address it
Yes, you
before it
should
gets to that
pre-address
point.
it. But before we even book the sales call, I find out if there's another decision-making person that needs to be involved in the sales call, get them in the sales call together. But there's cases where the booking agent might have forgotten that question, or somehow you booked the one. So when the meeting starts, again, I ask that same question. Are you married? Okay. I'm assuming, don't ask, is your wife or is your husband a big part of the decision making when it comes to this type of things? Is Jerry, are you married? You say yes. Well, Jerry, I'm assuming that, your spouse is a big part of the decision-making process when it comes to anything going on in the house. I mean, I'm sure she gives you freedom, but I'm sure she loves to be involved and have pre-knowledge. Is she home at the moment? And
Mm.
let's get her in the call. Like, let's have her sit down with us, and she can definitely participate. And if she might have different questions than you have, Jerry. So it's important that she sits in. Well, very easy to get them both involved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I would handle it in a similar way. I like that you asked to bring them on the phone with you on the call then and there. I've tried that also. One thing I like to do too is like on my on my form to book a call, I always ask, "Oh, are you the sole decision maker?" Or on the sales call, I'm asking, "Oh, is your wife involved in the business?" "Oh, what does your wife think about you being on the call right now?" I try to get it out of them in the middle of the call, if not before the call. But if the wife objection does come up, towards the end of the call after asking for the close, I'll I'll do the Alex Ramosi and I'll ask, "Oh, does your wife know you've been having this problem in the business?" "Oh yeah, yeah, she does." "Okay, well, why would she be against something that she already agrees is a problem?" Right. So sometimes I'll
That's
try
good.
that one,
Yeah, that
but
one's real good.
other times it's like you said, it's like, you can't overcome it on that call then and there. And some people do need to speak with their spouse. And in the past, in the kiosk, I could get away with shaming people and go the extra mile and say, "Oh, why do you have to talk to your wife? Aren't you the man of the house? Like, isn't this for her anyway? Wouldn't she benefit? Wouldn't it be better if you surprised her with this tens unit and told her, 'Hey, babe, I bought you something that's going to help you with your pain,' you know?" So, there's more levers you can pull in person than
Yes.
over Zoom. If you make people uncomfortable, they're just going to want to
Click.
jump off the call.
Click.
Exactly. In person, you can get away with a lot more. Over Zoom, I don't think you can go that far. But, I like what you mentioned earlier about addressing it, earlier on. And I typically try to do that too, if not before the call even starts. But sometimes you just can't avoid it. And, unfortunately, it is what it is. Sometimes you just have to book that follow-up call.
Yes, yes, yeah. And don't be afraid of a follow-up call. In the insurance business, it's a little bit harder because people do not like to be sold in general. People definitely don't like to be
People like to
sold.
buy though.
People like to buy. They just don't like to be sold or feel like when someone said, "Oh, I'm selling you something." Well, if you go to a person and said, "Hey, I sold so and so some insurance down the street and they referred you, so I'm here to try and sell." The first thing they're thinking in there, "Oh, you're not going to sell me." You might have sold them. You're not selling me. So nobody likes really to be sold. People like to buy and people like to be helped, of course. So with that, we have to, and especially in insurance, people definitely don't like to be sold insurance because they think the insurance guys are sleazy. It's all about the commission. They don't really help your family. It's a product that you don't really get to use depending on the product that you have or you get in health insurance. Of course, you get to use that. So that's health insurance is the easiest thing to sell. Like it's mandated.
Everybody needs it.
Yeah. So, but when it comes to life insurance, it's a product that you don't really get to use, your family gets to use. So it's hard to sell people on that idea. So unless it's their idea. So of course, you have to approach it a little bit different and use those softer terms. Asking someone, are you the sole decision maker? We had that in our script. We took it out because it's already assuming that I'm trying to sell you something. So
Exactly.
therefore,
Yeah.
we phrased it. We still want to make sure, but we phrase it a little bit different. Are you married? Oh, it's important that your wife or your spouse is in on this conversation because Jerry,
Yeah.
if and when something happens, they're the ones dealing with it anyway. So it's important that they are
Yeah.
there.
Is your wife on board? Is your
Yes.
wife on board with this? What would you, oh, I gotta talk to my wife. What would your wife say? What would she say? You know, like
Yes.
try to get it out of them. And obviously, when you ask that question, it's not like the wife doesn't have all the context. So when she said, "Oh, I got to talk to my wife," oh, well, what do you think she'd say? Well, that's basically asking like what, like you have an objection. Maybe you're trying to use the spouse as a way to weasel out of making a decision, or. So I like asking that to see like what they really think. Well, what do you think they would say? Oh, I think she'd say it's expensive. Okay, maybe that's the real objection, and then you can address it, right? So sometimes, the spouse is just an excuse to get off the call and for them to think about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of people, it's just a tactic to definitely back out of the call. I would say too, going back to the topic of preparation, this thing about, I think it was from Eric Thomas, if you're familiar with him, the hip hop preacher. Shout out to
Yep.
Eric
Oh, I
Thomas.
saw him
Yes.
one time at Funnel Hacking Live.
Yes, yes, yes.
Very
He's
talented.
very talented, very, very motivational. I love Eric. He gets me going in the mornings. So with that, I heard him say, he studied the military, and of course, I've been involved with friends in ROTC and things like that. So very familiar with certain of the military strategies. And they say before they go into battle, before they go into anywhere, they study their enemy, right? And if you're not studying your enemy, you're giving them the upper hand. It's like you're bound to fail. Here, use your tricks on us. We don't know anything about them,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
So,
It's so true. Studying your enemy is so important.
yes.
Yes.
So, is your prospect your enemy when you're in a sales call? Absolutely not. But guess what's your enemy? Their objections is your enemy.
Mm.
So
Yep.
therefore, you study your prospect in order to gain a little bit of insight in their mind. I love what you said about researching them on Facebook and things like that. That's something that I would say that we're not even doing. So we're going to start implementing it. Thank you very
Yes.
much, Jerry.
I can vouch for it. I can
Yeah.
vouch for it. Earlier in the year, I closed a franchise client on writing YouTube ad scripts. And it was just a simple, writing of scripts, but there were five people on the call. There were five partners because this franchise business was, and I don't want to dox them, but it was a franchise business that had five different sections. Like each of these people headed a different business. Basically, it was five businesses in one, right? So, so what I did on the call is, well, before the call, I researched every single person and I had notes on every single individual from their social media, from their LinkedIn. So I had something to say about each and every individual person. Oh, Jack, congratulations on XYZ. Hey, John, it's amazing that you like this thing because I love that thing too. So and I would sprinkle it throughout the conversation. So I did.
Yes.
So it was like I was performing a play. I was not
Yes.
only selling my product, I was answering their questions. I was inserting little comments that I from my personal research, and I floored everybody on the call. They were also impressed. They said yes on the spot. And so all five people, I closed, all because I did my research, I did my due diligence, and I collected a $5,000 sale. So felt really good. So, it goes to show that, doing your research, doing your due diligence is one of the keys to success.
Yes, and it gives you an insight into the different personalities, as we go back to that a little bit, that you would have in the call. When you're talking about, I mean, five different, that's a lot, five different salespeople on the call or sales prospect on the sales call, then you possibly have five different personalities that you have to sell to at the same time. I mean, if it's just a husband and wife, you could deal with two different personalities because a lot of times husband and wives are not the same, right? We have the opposite attract, as they say. So a lot of times one might be dominant and the other might be emotional, right? Or one might be calculating, the other one might be, very, what's the word, empathetic, in as far as their approach. So dealing with a partnership like that, having the insight from research, you get to see the things that they care about, and you can know a lot about a person based on the things they care about, right? So you learn their what's the word, personality just a little bit, and you can adjust your sales script, your sales strategy in during the sales call to address those. I recently had a sales call, and this is a loss. Like I would talk about, we lose, win some, you lose some. So for it is, I'm not calling it a loss yet, right? I'm still working it after the call, but it wasn't an immediate close where the husband was all on board. He was much like my personality. And it's very easy to sell to your personality. Actually, most people default to selling like how they buy, right? So it was much like my personality. He was very much calculated, very numbers. So when I said the numbers, he was like, yeah, this is going to save me money, give me more insurance. I'm all in. I'm all on board, right? The wife, however, very emotional. And it took my AI to pick up on that after the call. When I put the call, Fathom, of course, recorded everything. I put it in hey, and I asked the AI, hey, where did I go wrong? And it said, well, you were, of course, pushing the numbers to make sense to the wife, whereas she was just on the fact that, hey, last time we did this, the agent said that this type of insurance was the best to get and blah, 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 and this and that. And they really sold us on it. Now you're telling me that based on our age and everything like that, this is actually not the best insurance. So, I mean, it's a trust thing. Right now, she feels betrayed and, all of this. And I didn't address that. I didn't overcome that objection. So we had to, I send her some information, and then I put some things based on the AI suggestion, of course, answering addressing the emotional side of things. But I mean, that goes to show how you can lose a sales call as well if you're not addressing or selling to that person's personality. If they're an emotional buyer, you have to approach it emotionally and build that emotional connection with them to say, okay, last time I know this is, especially if you bring it up before they brought it up, right? Hey, Jerry,
Yeah.
last time I know they really sell you on, their whole life and this and that, the third. But based on your goals and things, we've gained a little bit more insight on what you're trying to achieve. This is, I would say that I don't know if they ask you these questions, but this is why we're coming up with these answers now. It's all to help you and your future achieve what you want. Boom. I didn't even bring up any
Well
numbers.
said. Well said. That was great.
Right? That's all emotional. So now I'm like, oh, well, hindsight is 2020. That was a learning experience. So I thank them for that. At the very least, I learned something new, you know. Um,
Yeah,
and if you're learning from each sales calls, I think that's also a win.
absolutely. Couldn't have
Yeah.
said it better.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jerry, man, we've been for an hour, and guys, definitely, we definitely will have to pick up the sales. I love talking about sales. We definitely have to pick up this, maybe next episode or a follow-up episode. But it's very amazing. I hope this helped you guys, and booking and closing a little bit more sales in the future. If you have any questions or anything that we talked about, you want us to expand on, of course, drop that comment. Don't forget to turn your notifications on, subscribe, follow the channel. Lots and lots more, lots of good topics that we talk about here. And if you
Yes.
have a topic, definitely drop that in the comment there as well.
Thank you so much, Richard. Always a pleasure.
Yes, yes, absolutely, guys. Love y'all. Y'all stay blessed. Until next time. Peace.
Peace.